Now, after moving from the UK to Australia myself, there was definitely a list of things which confused me quite a lot about life in Australia. And also speaking to other Brits and kind of viewing other Brits on social media, it's become clear that it's not just me, it is Brits in general that move to Australia. There is definitely a list of things that confuse us about life here, and we're going to go into that in today's video. Point number one is the way that Australians call certain things, in particular items of clothing. This definitely surprised me when I got here and definitely confuses a lot of Brits. Now, flip-flops, a very commonly worn item of clothing here in Australia, but they don't even call them flip-flops here. These are flip-flops in the UK, but in Australia they call them thongs. What we would call trousers in the UK, they call them pants in Australia. And things like sliders, they call slides. I've noticed with things like this, and also how they mention types of food, is very similar to Americans. Like Americans will say pants, whereas in the UK, trousers are your long trousers that you wear day to day, and pants are like underwear. Definitely confuses a lot of Brits when they first move here. Point number two is meal deals and sandwiches from kind of supermarkets. In the UK, we are famous for our meal deals. In particular, Tesco, they were famous for like the £3 meal deal where you get a sandwich, you get a drink, and you get a bag of crisps for very cheap, like £3 or about $6. In Australia, this is nowhere to be seen at all. If there is any kind of meal deal, it's gonna be like minimum $10, $12, like at least £6, like double the price of the UK minimum. In Australia, to buy like a supermarket sandwich, it's really expensive. In fact, it would be literally the same price for a sandwich in a shop in Australia as it would be for a whole meal deal in the UK. Meal deals just aren't really a thing so much in Australia, and if they are, they're really expensive. Something that Australia definitely needs to introduce. Point number four is another way that Australians call things, and that is certain vegetables. For example, this is a pepper, right? Nope, not in Australia, it's a capsicum. What is that? I've never heard the term capsicum in my life. Surely that's just a pepper. Like that there, that's a courgette, right? Nope, not in Australia. That is a zucchini. This one here, an aubergine. No, it's eggplant in Australia. I'm convinced they just call things differently just to be different. Why are they changing the names of all these things? Definitely confused me when I first moved to Australia when I was searching at the supermarket for pepper, only to find out it's called a capsicum. Next up is a couple of Aussie phrases that definitely confuse Brits, such as how's it going? This is very common in Australia. How you going? How's it going? Definitely surprised me and kind of confused me a bit when I first got here because I'd never really heard anyone say that as a greeting. Another common thing that they say is how did you go? I noticed this, I think it was in Sydney. I was actually trying on some clothes in a changing room and I came out the changing room and they were like, how did you go? I was like, what? Does that even make sense? But Aussies say it a lot. If you've done something or you tried something, they'll be like, how did you go? I don't know. I'd never ever heard that in the UK, and I feel like them sort of phrases definitely confuse a lot of Brits. Point number six is kangaroo meat in the supermarkets. I didn't even know this was a thing moving to Australia. I thought Australians kind of like kangaroos, but a lot of them just think they're pests, to be honest. And I couldn't believe that they actually eat kangaroos. And there's literally kangaroo burgers. So there's like kangaroo steak and sausages in the supermarkets. This is definitely one thing that confuses a lot of Brits in Australia because I feel like Brits think that kangaroos are just chill and all Aussies love them and they would never eat them. But Aussies literally eat kangaroos, it's crazy. Point number six is literally waiting 10 minutes to cross the road. Now I don't know why, but in Australia, it literally feels like it takes twice the amount of time to cross the road than it does in the UK. I feel like in the UK, you can cross the road pretty quickly, but here in Australia, the amount of times I feel like I'm just stood waiting to cross the road for like 2 minutes, just stood there. It happens all the time. I don't know what it is about the crossings in Australia, but they just take forever compared to the UK. And I feel like as a Brit, first coming here, you stood at the road for like 2 minutes thinking, what is going on? Because I swear in the UK, it doesn't take that long. Point number seven is calling people buddy. Now, I'd never really heard this much in the UK. I think it's quite a rare term to call people buddy, and in fact in the UK I would almost consider it a bit rude calling people buddy, because it's almost like you would only really call someone buddy if they're like a child or someone that's very young. It's kind of like, yeah, something you call like a child. But in Australia, everyone seems to call each other buddy. The amount of times I've been called buddy by like managers and stuff and just people in Australia. In Australia, it's a very common term used. People say it to everyone, even like older men as well. Everyone just calls each other buddy. And I think to Brits, where that's not really a common thing in the UK, it's definitely quite confusing at first, but buddy, why is that such a common term in Australia? And point number 8, the last thing that confuses Brits here in Australia is the time zones and daylight saving. In the UK, it's very easy. We are just on one time zone. The clocks go back at one point in the year, and then the other point in the year, the clocks go forward. That is it. It's very, very easy. In Australia, certain places change their clocks, certain places don't at all. And also the time zones, there's like 3 time zones, I think, in Australia. But the weirdest thing about it is certain places, I think, like Adelaide, literally have like a half an hour difference to like Sydney. What is that all about? Surely you just keep the same time zone or do an hour. Very different to the UK, where it's very easy, just one time zone and everyone changes their clocks. I still haven't worked it out here in Australia. So there is a list of things that confuse Brits in Australia, or definitely confused me at least. I think a lot of Brits that have moved here do find that these things confuse them as well. Let me know your thoughts in the comments on this one, and I'll see you very soon with another video.